Katie is going to come up here, and she is going to introduce the keynote speaker. But Katie Adams, let me introduce you to her. Katie Adams Henderson. She grew up in Exeter before relocating to New York City for college and a career in book publishing. She's a pro. She moved back home in 2018, where she runs her freelance editing business and lives in town with her husband and 3 sons. Please join me in a warm welcome for your new Litfest president.
I will be ruling with an iron fist. No, thank you to Renee. She built this whole thing, and she has many things in town, and we are very grateful. So I'm going to introduce this year's keynote. Andre Dubus III's 9 books include the New York Times bestsellers House of Sand and Fog, The Garden of Last Days, and his memoir Townie. He has been a finalist for the National Book Award and has been awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship, the National Magazine Award for Fiction, 2 Pushcart Prizes, and is a recipient of an American Academy of Arts and Letters Award in Literature. His books are published around the world in over 25 languages, and he teaches at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. His most recent book, published just a few weeks ago, is a collection of personal essays called Ghost Dogs on Killers and Kin. As the Wall Street Journal said, quote, "This may be the best book you'll read in years." Available for sale in the back. He'll be joined in conversation by Matt Miller, an award-winning poet, a former Stegner Fellow, and a teacher and coach at Phillips Exeter Academy.
Let's sit. Hi, everybody. Afternoon. Can you hear us? So, this is Matt Miller. I love his poetry. I teach it to my students at UMass Lowell. So I have to tell you, I was lost at 3:34 in the morning in the backwoods of Mississippi this morning, trying to get to Memphis to fly to Boston to get here. A 1-hour trip from Oxford, Mississippi to Memphis took 2.5 hours in my little rented Camaro. I missed the plane, thought, Jesus, I am not going to make it to Exeter. And then some lovely lady named Danielle got me to Chicago, and here I am. But I haven't slept in 3 days, and if I start to slur, I am not intoxicated.
Not yet.
But I'm going to take a nap while Matt talks. I'm going to stand.
You gonna stand? All right.
Yeah, because I'll fall asleep. Go ahead, say something.
I'll say something. So Andre is going to read a little bit, but I just want to, before he does that, I was just going to say we had this great introduction about him, but sort of a personal place. My first introduction to Andre was actually through my mother, who's here. She bought a book years ago, House of Sand and Fog, and she went up to get it signed by Andre, and I was working as a security guard at the time in San Francisco, and she told him that. He said, he's doing the right stuff. He's doing the right work to be a writer. And I just, and for you, he's been a great supporter of me. He wrote a foreword for my last book. He's so generous with, as you probably all know, with his time and we have a writing conference we run at Exeter, and I invited him there once. Most people just come and they do their reading, grab their check, and go. He came, sat in the dining hall before the reading, hung out with all the participants, and then he talked to every person in that conference until about 2 a.m, listened to all their stories, and there were a lot of tears. It was kind of beautiful. He's such a great, advocate for other writers. David Maloney is the novelist here. He's, took him under his wing. And there's a thing a couple weeks ago, I was having dinner at Otis, and I was with the director of a MFA program, and she was talking about how she was going to see Andre at an event, and she was really looking forward to not liking him. She's like, I love his writing. He can't be that nice. And he's like, I want to not like him. And I go, what'd you think? And she's like, he's wonderful. So I just wanted to say that, a little personal connection. And Andre's going to read a little bit, I think, from his new collection, Ghost Dogs. And then we're going to talk a little bit about that and some of his other work.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Yeah, so I'm going to read the entire book. It'll take 3 hours. It's going to keep me awake and put you to sleep. Now, I thought I'd read for like 14.4 minutes. So it's a collection of essays I think I wrote over about 30 years. I've written, there are, I think, 19 in here, I think, and I culled them from about 40 that I've published over the years, and so they kind of follow. I'll just read. This one's called Shelter. It was the coldest winter in New England in over 100 years, and we were framing my house in the snow. For over 30 days straight, the wind chill was below zero, and most mornings my younger brother Jeb and I and our friend Jim would spend over an hour just shoveling off the job site so we could set up our cutting station, oil and load our nail guns, and light the propane heater to get the compressor warm enough to run. Most days, I'd have to chisel off the decks just so we could snap a line for the toe plates of walls. I grew a beard to keep my face warm. Why not wait till spring? Because I bought these 2 acres of land over 3 years earlier, and it had taken us that long to get all the necessary permits in place. Because for the past 9 years, my wife and I have been raising our 3 children in a vinyl-sided half-house that was small and dark and cluttered with toys and the second-hand furniture we owned. Because since my birth 43 years earlier, I lived in over 24 rented houses and apartments, had always had a landlord, some threatening my single mother with eviction, some threatening me. And now, for the first time, I had money in the bank, a lot of it all from a novel I'd written over 4 years in my parked car, and because, well, I just couldn't wait. At first, there was the desire to get the whole project started and done with. Like most writers, for years I've been hoping for a time when I could give my entire day to writing and reading. Now, after over 20 years of daily labor, I could finally do just that. My agent kept calling to ask why I wasn't hiring somebody to build my house. Don't you want to write another novel? I did, of course, but for the kind of house we wanted to build, an in-law apartment for my wife's aging parents, a bedroom for each of our children and one for us, it would just be too expensive to hire a builder when I had the skills to do it myself. I estimated I could cut costs in half. An accurate estimate, it turned out, but part of me didn't want to do it at all. Wasn't a house just another material object anyway? Did we really need to own one? Did anybody? But this ambivalence began to dissipate the week after our permits were approved. It was a cold Sunday in November, the sky gray, the air heavy with future snow. 2 days earlier, my foundation contractor had poured our footings, and he told me they'd cure better if I kept them warm. So that morning, I drove to a local farm in my pickup and bought a dozen hay bales, drove to my wooded lot, tossed them off, then used a pitchfork to spread hay over concrete, my concrete, poured in the shape of my house on my land. It took us over 2 years. Every day, I pull up to the site at 7 a.m., the smells of sawdust and pine pitch in the air, those lovely naked 2x6 walls standing plumb, level, and square. And I'd buckle on my leather carpentry belt of tools and work alongside my brother and my friend, and later with a new carpenter I'd hired too. That spring, the snows melted, but it brought some of the heaviest rains in 50 years, and we hung massive tarps to work under. By early that summer, the 4 of us were roofing my house during a heat wave. When it came time to cover the exterior walls with cedar shingles, my wife Fontaine, a modern dancer who used to make a living upholstering furniture, spent 2 months nailing up over half of them while I did the rest. I hired my 67-year-old mother to paint the corner boards, the soffits and fascia, the window and door casings. While my wife had a fear of heights, my mother had none. There were electricians and plumbers on the job now, and every hour or so I'd pause in my work and glance up to see my mother standing on the scaffolding 40 feet in the air, squinting in the sun as she brushed paint onto the trim of my house. I remember the doctor we rented a house from when I was 12, a tall man with thick glasses who stood at our door in his coat and tie and asked that our mother leave and take us 4 kids to live in the projects. I remembered over the years all the scrappy places we'd lived in that somebody else had owned. Painting my big new homemade house, My mother looked so happy, and it made me happy seeing that. The truth is, except for those moments of unspeakable grace holding our 3 newborn children, I've never been happier than when I was building for us this house. One late afternoon, a cold rain starting to fall, I stood on a plank outside my daughter's second-story bedroom, trying to finish the shingles around her window. The sun was down and the plank was getting slippery, and a small voice inside me said to quit now and head home. But I no longer felt that where we lived was home. And as I fit a shingle into place up against my daughter's window, this motion felt like something else, though I did not at first know what it was. Then I did. It was just like pulling the covers up to my daughter's chin right after she fell asleep. It was like doing that with her 2 brothers, too. It was like closing their bedroom door and tiptoeing down the hall. It was like locking the front and back doors and checking the windows and turning off the lights. It was like holding them as babies and wanting my arms to be a shelter for them and never wanting to let go. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you. A magazine asked some male writers who happened to be fathers to write. The editor called me and said, would you write a letter to a boy about love on love? I said, well, can I write one to my 2 grown sons? He said, yeah. So this one's called A Letter to My 2 Sons on Love. My beautiful sons, you're young men now, 31 and 27, and you're both more perceptive than I ever was, especially when I was your age and older, when I was full of rage. So, because you are, both of you, smarter and more whole than I was at your age, you probably won't be surprised to hear that the notion of truly loving someone and being loved back terrified me. The first time I ever went to a therapist, I was 24 or 25. This was in my hometown, her office not far from the Y, where I lifted weights and hit the heavy bag and kept myself ready for the next fight. A block or 2 south was the convenience store with cracked front windows and mostly empty shelves that everybody, even the cops, knew was a front for bookies and drug dealers. Across from it was a laundromat where young mothers washed the clothes of the kids they let run wild through the streets. And to the north was the park where the drunks slept on the ground in the summer on a hill overlooking the Merrimack River. The lady who became my therapist for the next few weeks seemed old to me then, though she was only in her early 60s. She had a lined face and wore cardigan sweaters and skirts and nylons. Her eyes were gray but warm. She asked me why I'd come to her, and I wasn't sure. It wasn't because I couldn't stop looking for victimizers to victimize and once almost beat one to death and nearly got beaten to death myself. It wasn't because I saw the world as a dark place or that I expected disaster at every turn. It was because more than one girlfriend had said to me in various ways, "You don't let me love you." It was true. I would much rather do the loving, the rescuing, the tending to than have it done to me. But as I explained to that smart, kind woman in her small office so many years ago, I knew that if I surrendered to love, that I would die. And then this image came to me, a clear glass of warm water in a dissolvable tablet. The water represented the sort of love required of me, the kind where you open your heart fully to the other. The tablet was me. This young man who still remembered as a boy his mother crying herself to sleep in the weeks after his father drove away. This young man who couldn't get all the fighting out of his head. His mother and father throwing things at each other, swearing, screaming, slamming doors. This young man who watched his still beautiful young mother date man after man and asked very few of them to stick around. This young man who, like his brother and sisters, felt tossed out on his own. We human beings are all a multitudinous mystery, so I reject the notion that it was my childhood alone that formed me into a hard tablet who wanted no part of a glass of warm water, who would rather love than be loved, who would rather hug a woman with one arm because he had to keep the other free to ward off the danger that was surely coming. I don't remember what my therapist said to me about this image, but as it hung in the air between us, I knew I did not like what it revealed about me, that I did not trust the good things in this life, that I would rather not love, as the wise saying goes, than lose and hurt again. Then I met your future mother. When I first saw her, she was doing that thing that made her her. She was dancing on stage, and I was in the audience, and I could not take my eyes off her. I was drawn not so much to her physical beauty as to the power she exuded as she moved, as if she needed no one. Like the world was hard, yes, but dance. Then, months later, meeting her for the first time, I found myself sitting next to her in the back seat of my friend's car on a 4-hour drive south to New York City. I was heading there to do a reading with your grandfather. She was heading there to visit a friend and to dance. I hadn't slept much the night before, and she was getting over the flu, and so we both laid our heads on the seats and talked quietly to one another. And the thing is, as I looked into her brown eyes, as I listened to her talk of wanting only to dance and to draw, I recognized her from long, long ago, from before I was born. On our first date together, a lunch where I was so nervous I ate only salad, I had to keep looking away from her face because tumbling down through my head was this sentence, God, that's my wife. I'd never wanted a wife. I never wanted marriage, and I sure as hell wasn't looking for one. But when I was in the presence of this strong, creative, and beautiful young woman, it was like hearing once again the strains of an ancient music, and I knew I was supposed to move to it, to join myself to it, whether I wanted to or not. I could have proposed to her that very day, but my fears began to stalk me like a gang of young men years earlier who'd cruised the streets looking for me for weeks. Then, a cold February night, 10 months after we'd met, I finally got down on one knee and asked her to marry me. She punched me in the shoulder and said, "What took you so long?" That night was 36 joyous years ago. All the way to our June wedding, I vacillated between hope and black terror. What good could ever come from marriage? What could ever come from love but pain and loss and an acute loneliness? But whenever I was with your future mother, the parts of me I was ashamed of, my lack of faith, my short fuse for bad behavior of any kind, felt smaller around her. And the parts of me that I was not ashamed of, my desire to create art, my tendency to feel compassion for others, felt larger. By opening myself to her love of me, I was opening myself to also loving the boy whom I had stopped loving to protect myself from it all. Then I was stepping into that terror the same way I learned to square off with a man who had every intention of doing me harm. On a hot, cloudless day in early summer, your mother and I vowed to love one another in her Greek Orthodox church in front of 250 people who loved us, including my mother and father, who had gone on to love other people a few times over, yet still loved one another, hugging and kissing and teasing each other whenever they could. And my sons, it is my love for this... Sorry. Jeez. It is my love for this one woman all these years that has carried me into some eternal village of spirits where I have not died but lived far more fully and acutely than I would have otherwise. And it never would have happened if I had not surrendered to the deep and terrifying and exalting mystery of love. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad, actually, you read that last passage from that essay, because I was thinking about this book, and so much is it about a book of love. And, you know, if you don't mind, I'm thinking of your father's essays. I was thinking about some essays in Broken Vessels, where it's these men who love each other but don't have an access to the language to talk about. They watch Red Sox together, and that's how they show their love for each other. But in this book, there's a pushing forward into that, like, how do I talk about love? How do I, you know, there's a lot of interrogation of masculinity and what that means, what it means to be a man, especially in an age of growing a sense of strong men, of everyone armoring up. And, you know, how do you find the language and do that and talk about love as man, and men talking about love with each other, you know?
I don't know. All right. Okay, let's get a beer. No, you know, I just love writing. I've been doing it all my adult life, which is over 40 years now, and, you know, I never lose enthusiasm because I never know what I'm doing. And it's always so invigorating, but and I love the essay form. And so I found over the years, I am going to answer your question. That's okay. I found over the years that, like, I'll finish a novel or a story, and then I need to write about something straight from my life, something just about whatever I'm learning in this life that we all move through. The word, as you know, if you speak French, essayer, the word essay comes from that word essayer, which means to try or to attempt. And so what are you trying or attempting to do? You know, I'm trying to just descend deeper into my human existence with words and see what I find. And it's what I love about writing more than anything. You know, the 12th century Sufi poet Rumi said, you know, sell your cleverness and purchase bewilderment. So I guess, isn't that great? Sell your cleverness and purchase bewilderment. So anyway, writing about love. You're so right about my dad. He was born in 1936. And, you know, his father, like so many fathers and sons, his father never said those three words to him, and my father never said them back to him. And my father was a young Marine when his father was dying at age 59. And my dad stayed up all night sipping bourbon. My dad and my mom's right here in the audience right now. I can see my mom sitting right there. Yeah, but anyway, my dad stayed up all night with his. They're both, mom and dad are from Louisiana. All the relatives are from Louisiana. And he stayed up with his two older sisters sipping bourbon till dawn as the old man lay dying in the other room. And my father was trying to get up to nerve to go into the room and look his father in the face for the first time and say, I love you. And just when he got up to nerve, he went in and his dad had died. And my father I'm sure you know, I'm the son of the great short story writer. If you haven't, and essayist, you haven't read him, you're in for a treat. Anyway, he would say, I love you to us as like punctuation. Love you, man, love you, love you. He'd also call, say, hey, asshole, how are you? I was going to school in Texas, and he called me, says, this is your father who art in Haverhill. You know? How are you, asshole? I love you too, Dad. But I don't know, I guess what I'm trying to say is, even though we grew up, I mean, I'm a few years older than you, Matt, but grew up in this time and in this place where, you know, I put on that armor, and I became a fighter defending myself and others, and, you know, that's behind me now, but it was never hard for me to look anyone in the face and say, I love you, and so, I don't know. And the older I get, right, as we all age, it seems like that's all we got. It seems like that's all it's about. And if I can just hold forth for a moment, the lack of sleep from Mississippi is kicking in. I do think that's the point of life. I mean, you know, I don't know what you guys think. You have your own opinions, of course, but I think we're here to figure out who we are and be that person. And we're here, maybe even more than that, to learn how to love and be loved. And I think that's it. And that includes loving people we don't know. So, I don't know, man. I think all my life I've been writing about love, but everybody's awfully effed up when I do.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that point about with the word essay, meaning to attempt or try. You know, I was teaching Ghost Dogs, the title essay, to some students in the fall.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. They were just pondering, like, and it's, you know, you have to read it's actually wonderful. It's about learning sort of like learning to love the dog, so you can learn to open yourself up to love. And the kids were wondering, like, you know, was he trying? What did he set out to do with that story? He was just writing a memory about a dog, and then.
I got to tell you, there's the title essay is called Ghost Dogs, and it stars our now deceased dog Rico, who was a rescue dog from Georgia. We got it for our kids, Fontaine and I, and it was the family dog. And I didn't have bad feelings about the dog. Sometimes I did, but I felt nothing about the dog. Like it was like nothing. I'd be gone for 3 weeks, you know, on a book tour, and, you know, and I'd miss my wife and kids, my mother-in-law who lived downstairs. I missed her, and then I'd come home and I'd see the dog. I'd say, oh yeah, I have a dog, but I never thought of him. Like, one thing about you have a lamp in the corner of the living room. And, you know, once my youngest son Elias, who's anyway, he was maybe 15. He said, Dad, can't you see what a beautiful dog he is? Look at him, and he was a beautiful dog. I said, buddy, I can. I know he's a good dog. I know he's a beautiful dog. But imagine I'm a gay man having dinner with a beautiful woman. I just feel nothing inside. What can I tell you? I'm dead inside. So now the kids leave the house and they're, you know, off on their lives, and Fontaine and I are empty nesters, and the dog's getting old. He's got white hair. I grow a white beard in the winter, so we look alike. We both have small faces, pointy noses, and white beards, and he starts following us up to the bedroom, which he never did before. He starts to get really needy. He's kind of losing his hearing, and I begin to feel sorry for him. And I ask, well, how come I never let myself love this dog? Why haven't I let myself love this dog? He's going to die. And that's why I wrote the essay. And it led me to places I had forgotten, I'd buried. A lot of trauma around dead dogs and dying dogs and missing dogs. And, you know, I wrote in this memoir, Townie, I wrote all about the human trauma, and I left the dogs out because I never thought of them. But now I'm concentrated on the dogs. And I'll shut up about this essay. I finished this essay, and it changed my relationship to Rico. That didn't happen writing a memoir about my childhood. That didn't change me. That essay changed my... I said, buddy, now I know why I can't love you. Come here, buddy. You want some steak? You want a piece of expensive salmon? And I love the dog, and I'm going to tell you, it's not in the essay, because I wrote it before this happened. And then he died, but do you know how he friggin' died? I was going out for ice cream, and he was deaf and blind. He walked under my truck, and I ran over my own damn dog. Sorry. Now they're not going to buy that damn book, Ghost Dogs.
Because that happens earlier.
It killed me. I wept. I cried. I stayed up all night. Thank God my youngest son was home to help me.
When you were a child, too, the family dog was hit by a car.
I ran over the family dog. But it was a Toyota, my mother's little Toyota. It was like a chiropractic adjustment for this old dog. He perked right up. He was fine. That's not what killed him. But anyway, no, he was fine. The old dog when I was 19, he was fine.
Some of the things that happen in an essay are you reveal some stuff that, you know, are hard moments about yourself to look into. Like I'm not always been a great person around. And you know, it's one thing. We understand sometimes when we're mean to people, but mean to animals, especially pets and dogs, and to write that, through that, was that hard to do? I'm just going to open this up, and here I am.
Yeah, but, you know, I'm one of these guys with no boundaries. You know, like I'll be at a party, hey, how much do you make? All the older guys, hey, buddy, how's the prostate? How many times a night do you go, honestly? So I'm kind of naturally suited to... I don't know. I have to say, though, I do try to get as emotionally naked on the page as I can. And I do suffer from great self-loathing afterwards and remorse, and, you know, that whenever you feel like you've offered too much, you want to go hide. So I do feel that way. So it does have a cost, but for me, I think the cost is higher not to shine a light on whatever truth we've got in the short time we're on the planet. You know, one of my favorite lines from Willa Cather, the great American novelist, is, artistic growth is, if nothing else, a refining of the sense of truthfulness. And especially as I get towards my own end, you know, maybe at age 140 without my own dog running me over in my truck, I just feel even more of an urgency to never lie, to never bullshit on the page. I've always tried not to, but I feel even more urgency. Come on, man, our time is short. If you get 100 years, it ain't long enough. Let's write the truth. So that's what I try to do.
Yeah, I was thinking of that in that essay, High Life, which talks about, you know, you're talking about you don't mind asking somebody how much they make, or because that's really, you know, a lot of writers don't go there to talk about that part, the financial part of their lives, from the low to the highs. Our mutual friend Joe Herc once did that in graduate school. He showed us, this is what I make as a writer. We're all like, oh damn, we're gonna be writers. It's gonna be horrible. But you do the opposite end. Like, I've had some success. Here's what it's looked like. Here's what I can do for me, my family, other people. But in this country, we have this odd, you know, let's not talk about money and politics and stuff, but you were willing to just throw that out there.
Yeah, and maybe we don't talk about it because we are tragically, we tie it to our self-esteem. And it's awful. I mean, I met a man once who had $400 million in various bank accounts. He's the most unhappy person I ever met, with no self-esteem. And anyway, that's a whole nother story. Yeah, I mean, that essay, High Life, so, you know, my wife and I lived the way we grew up, with no money, but, you know, it was a rich, beautiful life. We're having our 3 kids. I'm teaching at 5 campuses around Boston. I'm remodeling houses as a self-employed carpenter. She's teaching dance and upholstering furniture. We're poor but happy, you know, cobbling together like 9 W-2s a year. And I don't think we ever made more than $29,000. And then my 3rd book took off and made me an 18-year overnight success, and then it got Oprah-fied, and there was even more success. And I had a big chunk of change in the bank that freaked me out. What do I do with this? I said, you look depressed, you need 10 grand? Here it is. What do you mean I've been offended? I took my best friend's mother. She grew up in Haverhill. She's in her 70s. She'd never been to Boston. Never been to you know, she said, well, they're bad neighborhoods. Let me tell you, honey, the neighborhood you live in Haverhill is worse. you go walk down the Back Bay of Boston. I think you'll feel fine. So I rent a friggin' limo, 20 people. I take them all, box seats, give them $200 each for beer money. I mean, and finally my wife said, you know, honey, you're out of your mind. I said, yes, I got to get rid of this. It's killing me. I don't know it's a good problem. I wish it on you all, but... But it's interesting about, you know, you know, a lot of us are hardwired for scarcity. And so when abundance comes, whatever form it's in, I mean, that's really that love essay, but I was really terrified of the abundance that my wife was giving me with her heart and her soul. So I've been catching up to abundance all my life. And so that's what I guess I was really writing about.
Again, back to that topic of putting it all out there, and I was thinking about, with a lot of writers in the room too, and thinking about how you shape a book, a collection of essays, you know, because, you know, it's less plot driven than a traditional novel. So, but you're trying to make an arc of some sort, I'd imagine. And in that, you have this beautiful essay about your grandfather, and it's wonderful, Pappy. And then you come, and that last essay is Relapse, where and I don't know, you go back and you talk about sort of the violence of the youth. Not only that, but like how it's affected your own children. It's a much darker, you know, there's no, like, we're not ending necessarily it's a messy joy at the end. It's not like easy, okay, we're out. That was a great story. We feel good, you know, walking away feeling good about, like, happy about the world. It's like, ooh. It's not only just showing the man behind the curtain, it's showing the ugliness inside the man behind the curtain in some ways, and how that, we were talking backstage a little bit, the sins of the fathers visited upon the sons, and how that, you had to show us how it was visited upon your children, your own past. And I don't know, like, why did you choose to end it there? Why would you give us all that?
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have. No, man, oh man. That essay, it's called Relapse, as you said, and it haunts me, because you're right, it's really about, you don't have to have read my memoir, Townie, but I was a small, bullied kid, and a lot of violence in my town. I started to fight back, and I became a victimizer of victimizers I especially despise, and will take it to my grave. hatred of male violence against women and kids. I just wanted to kill them, and I beat up a lot of guys, and I got beaten up by guys back in that world. But we know that violence is the dark road. It's the road of death, and violence does cause more violence. And so I got away from it, and creative writing really helped me get off it more than anything. And so what that essay is about is I went 25, 30 years. The last fight I was in, I was 29. It was Newburyport, Mass. A grown man, a man and a woman. It's a weird writer story. It was like 100 degrees. I was living with my sister Suzanne, and we're sharing an apartment, and she's playing Mozart's Requiem, and I'm just in shorts, and I'm barefoot, and I'm reading this novel knowing it has died. This is the day I've accepted this novel is dead. It was a horrible day. I said, how could I have not known for 2 years how bad this is? This is such a bad book. You can't write, you're never going to. And I heard a woman screaming. And I thought it was Mozart's Requiem. I said, no. I stick my head out the window, and I see a man dragging a woman by her hair around the corner of the building at the bottom of the street. So I drop my shitty novel, and I run down the street, and I see two businessmen in suits and ties watching from their antique shop. I run around the corner, and this man's... what I remember so much about this is they were both in their 20s or 30s, my age at the time, but she had long, beautiful hair she just washed, conditioned, and brushed. It was that, you knew she had just done that. And he had her by her hair and was punching her in the face with his fist. And at this point, I was working so hard not to punch anyone anymore. So as I'm running to him, I'm thinking, I'm just going to get him off her. But as soon as I touched, he was wearing a tank top, he's all tatted up, and as soon as I touched his muscular shoulders and felt the power of them, I just lost it and I beat him to death. I beat the shit out of him. And then she hit me. That's happened a few times. Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon, and I don't judge her for it. But as I'm walking back, with my bloody knuckles, and he's a bloody mess, running the opposite direction, and the two guys in their suits would say, "Hey, Rocky," I didn't feel good. I felt like I'd failed again. I just went down a dark road. That's not gonna make him stop hitting people. It's gonna make him angrier. And so I stayed away from violence for 30 years, 25, 30 years, until I was in a backwoods bar, a logging bar in the North Woods of Maine, and some guy got in my face, and I turned my back on my better angels and fought. And so what the essay is about is the legacy of my childhood young man violence on my grown kids. My son Austin's 31, Ariadne's 28, our daughter and our son Elias is 27, actually tomorrow. And what the writing brought me to, it's what I love so much about writing, is what terrifies me about writing. I'd love to hear if you feel the same way as a poet, Matt. It takes you places that surprise you, and where it took me that I didn't want to go where it took me. As a man, I didn't want, and where it took me was, part of me actually misses fighting. And I'm mortified to say that. Well, what is it you miss about fighting? There are very few moments in life as invigorating as facing off with another human being who may kill you, and you step into it anyway. And so I think that the essay really goes to that shadow, and I didn't want it to go there, but it's there. I'd be happy if you read the book and didn't read that essay, in fact. But again, man, you can run, but you can't hide with writing. That's what I love about writing. But does that happen to you as a poet? Does it take you? I bet it does.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As a poet and essayist as well, I remember just me and Ollie's little coffee shop over there, and I was trying to write a little essay just about my grandmother's love for the Red Sox. And suddenly I'm writing about my brother's deaths. Yeah. And I'm suddenly they're at my wake, or I'm their wake, and somebody hears a voice, and it's my brother's voice, but it's not, because he's passed away, but it's his son, or and I'm like, and all of a sudden I'm in the coffee shop bawling, and I was like, this is so beautiful that I get to do. I'm pushing into this, but also you find those places where I got to dig into this place where I am not a good person, where I have fallen, and I think it's really important that if you walk away from that, you're lying to yourself. But what do you get when you push through that. And I was thinking too about one of the earlier essays where you mentioned the word grace. I think it's in The Door. You're talking about your son.
Yeah.
He was going through some medical stuff, and I hate to bring your dad up again, but he had that great essay in
Please do.
Meditations in a Movable Chair, but an essay called Grace. And he's coming at it from a very Catholic religious background. You're coming from a more secular background. I think I ended my last book with the word grace. This idea of like, how do we achieve grace? Is it through pushing into those places and then getting through them?
Yeah, man. Comes back to love for me. We all have really hard lives, difficult lives. When I was, much younger, my wife and I were younger, and we were poor and stressed a lot, and the kids were little, and we argued more than we ever did in our marriage because of the, all that stress. It's normal. I remember one morning, I got in my, we had a little, spat before I got in my car to go work a construction job and then go teach at Emerson College and then get back at midnight and then do a bunch of bills and then get 4 hours sleep and try to write in the car for a few minutes. And my coffee was bad. And like I did and I got a drink, and I can't afford to go stop at Dunks, and so the car hardly starts up. I said, Jesus Christ, I cannot afford to fix this goddamn car. And as I'm pulling away, and I'm feeling bad about the spat Fontaine and I had, and I'm pulling to the bottom of my street, and this big-ass truck cuts me off. Whoa. And if that car could go fast enough, I would have friggin' chased him down, pulled him out, and relapsed right there in front of him. But okay, so there was that day, and then about a week later, my wife and I had a lovely kiss at the door. It was a beautiful morning together. The coffee was perfect, dark French roast, black, hot. Car started right up. I had a good $50 in the bank cushion. I pull up to the street, another truck, boom, cuts me off. And I say, careful, brother. You might hurt someone or yourself. And then I was driving away feeling like such a shallow asshole. Because I thought, and then I began to think, I think that's what saintly people are. And my brother's one. My brother Jeb is this kind of person, where their life is hard and they still step forward with love and kindness. And I think that's grace for me. That's grace. I don't achieve it as often as I would like.
Thank you. And I think we want to turn some questions over to the audience before we, do this. I think there's a microphone going to be going around.
Yes, you can be first.
Sorry to jump that out. Yeah.
You guys are great, by the way. Thanks for being at this festival.
The New York Times article in the Sunday paper a few weeks ago, you know what I'm talking about, sort of talked about your house, but portrayed you as someone who's now experiencing some aging and physical changes and stuff. How's that influencing you as a writer?
What aging physical changes? What's your name?
It talks about how you can stand now to
He
write.
said, what's your name?
Oh, my name Fran Hall.
Hi, Fran. What did it say? I forgot about that part. Well, I didn't read it.
It talked about how you had to stand up to write.
Oh, yeah.
Down in the
Yeah, I
the
hurt my
boiler
back.
room.
I've always, like probably a lot of you, I've had back issues all my life, and I heard it working on my deck a few summers ago, and so now I write standing up in my basement, and on these plywood shelves, and I put one foot up, and I don't think I'll ever write sitting down again. You know how it's affected my writing? Because I'm not in pain when I'm writing, my characters are much healthier. They don't have any problems. As a matter of fact, they need more problems to get this novel off the ground.
Hi, my name is Kay Peral.
Hi, Kay.
And hi. I want to thank you so much for your book, Such Kindness.
Oh, thank you.
It meant a great deal to me, and I think it makes people stop and tell them, pay attention, look at people, and don't assume so many things
Amen.
about them.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful, beautiful book, and I loved it. So I just want to
Thank
say
you. Thank you so much. I bring her to every reading. We were on the plane from Mississippi together. No, seriously, thank you so very much for that. And I have to tell you, that character, Tom, where he went, surprised me. I did not know he was going to go where he went. Thank you so much. I appreciate you reading it. Hey,
Hi,
what's
my
your
name is Janet, and I also was going to speak about such kindness. When you just mentioned your brother and the grace that he showed in spite of the hardship of his life, it just reminded me so much of the main character of that book that was
Yeah.
so beautiful. And anyone I give that book to, or recommend that book to, has the same exact reaction that I do about the humanity and the subtle changes that you showed in the character. And again, looking at people and recognizing the value in everybody. The book is profound, and thank you for writing it.
Boy, I'm glad I came to Exeter. No, thank you. That means so much. Thank you. But I will say one thing I've heard from a lot of readers, that they couldn't get past the first 80 pages because his life begins in such a hard place.
It's hard.
And then I'm glad you stuck it out. Thank
I
you.
tell people that too, to
Yeah.
just stick with it.
Yeah.
Did you ever fall off the ladder?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah. I
I
actually
wondered-
fell off a ladder, not from a high place, but I broke my knee falling off a ladder about 4 years ago, and I've been a runner my whole life, but we're talking about it backstage, but now I'm a biker. Got a Harley, no, it's a bicycle. Yeah.
Hi, Andre. How you doing?
Oh, Al DeCiccio. Hey,
Good to see
brother.
you. It's Ann's birthday tomorrow, too.
Oh, hey, Ann. Happy birthday.
I'm interested in your comments earlier about telling the truth, and I think about what you said recently about your fondness for poetry. So actually for both of you, I'm thinking of the line by Emily Dickinson, "Tell all the truth, but tell it slant." And I wonder if you think about that as you go from writing an essay to a memoir and a novel.
That's great, man. You first, Matt.
I always think, I tell that to my students too, like tell the truth, tell it slant, it's the truth and circuitous, because the sun will blind if you look right at it, and watch out Monday with the eclipse. But what is a metaphor but a lie? And I tell my students, it's a lie that tells the truth. You could say that men are dogs, and it's not literally true, but sometimes it's metaphorically true. And but it is one. I was just thinking about that too, that line, because in an essay where you're not using the metaphor of character or some other device, and you're just putting it out there, how slant is it? You're never going to get all to it, and every fact down the right way. It's always going to be filtered through your memory and your experience and how you're feeling that experience in that moment as you're writing it. But I'm not sure I'm going with this, but like the idea, I think it is, and when I'm writing essays, I'm being a little more like putting it out there and seeing what truth reveals from that. Like I might not even discover, oh my God, I didn't realize there's some symbol comes up that I didn't even realize that I was hiding behind. So I don't know if that makes sense.
I love how you describe that, Matt. It's a descent into the dream world, right? So whether it's nonfiction or fiction, and I don't write poetry. I've written 3 love poems to my wife, which I'll never show you, Matt. So, I'd love to know if you think I'm wrong about this. I think about Hills Like White Elephants by Hemingway. That great story, almost all dialogue between a man and a young woman. And basically, he's trying to talk her into getting an abortion. It was written in 1927. And I read it to my kids every semester, and they're always amazed that it's almost a 100-year-old story because it's so timeless. And, Hemingway never, there is never the word abortion. There is never, maybe procedure. Just put a little air in it, And so to me, it's a classic example of telling the truth, coming at it sideways. Hemingway would say he tries to do his work from the side, like a bank shot in billiards. And to me, this whole notion of coming at it from the side instead of on the nose captures beautifully. There's a wonderful interview with Mike Nichols, the director who died a few years ago, and the interviewer asked him, "What's the main question the story asks before creating stories, sir?" I thought it was a ridiculous question until, thank God, Mike Nichols answered. He said, well, it's not what the newspaper reporter asks. Of course, the central question for the reporter is, what happened, right? When, where, who? But he said, that's not the question the storyteller grapples with. Our question is, what's it like, what's it really like to be in this thing that's happened? And so I think that that's, Al, for me, whether it's an essay or a memoir or a novel, you're asking the same question. What's it really like to be in this moment? And of course, you can't do that without, my wonderful Elizabeth Strout says, you have to be desperately curious about your people. And that includes you too, right? You better be just as curious about you when you're writing your essay or memoir, because it's the younger you, even if that younger you was 2 years ago, who's asking you to pass the mic. So I think it's really important. The phone lines are lighting up.
Andre, I have a Haverhill question for you.
Beautiful.
I grew
Can
up...
we fight?
No, but you make me want to.
Oh, no! No, read my new book. You won't want to fight.
I wouldn't have had your elegance, but no, I never was in a fight in Haverhill. But I did live about 15 minutes walk from you, and the center of my childhood was the store called the Pleasant Spa.
That's it, baby. Top of 7th Avenue.
So what I want to ask you, this is a store on Main Street in Haverhill, still there, called the American something.
Yeah.
I think you should buy it and restore it, but that's not, that's not what I want to ask you. I used to go in there. They had nickel ice cream cones and comic books and all that, but they also had this rack of paperback books. Yeah. Okay, and they were all a quarter, 35 cents. And I used to spend my money on those and take them home and try to read them, and I couldn't even understand half of them. They were science fiction and mystery, and I don't know, but they just looked so great. And when I read Townie, I thought to myself, I wonder if Andre ever used to spend hours in that place like I did, just like looking at every book in the rack and
I am mortified to report. What's your first name, buddy?
Mike.
Hey, Mike. Hey, man, nice to meet you. No, I think I put this in Tiny. No, what I and my best friend who died young and my little brother did, we were stealing Penthouse magazines and candy bars and Coca-Cola. And I don't think I ever even noticed those books. But seriously, too, I was a reader until I got to a neighborhood where if you were walking down the street with a paperback, you'd get beat up. So I stopped reading from about age 13 to 22. I really did, except I'm not being honest here. I was one of those kids. I remember Haverhill High School teacher I had a huge crush on. I just love her, and I was 14 years old, and she assigned us a paper on Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. And we're walking out, and this drug dealer who's died of cirrhosis of the liver at age 45, he turns to me and says, "I'm not writing about that homo." And I said, "Me neither." Of course, I stayed up till 2 in the morning writing about Leaves of Grass, and I snuck that paper to the teacher. Didn't want anyone to know I wrote it, but I'm a coward.
One more. Okay.
Hi, I'm Susan, and I've lived in Haverhill since 1977.
Cool.
I'm talking about your book, Such Kindness, and I took a picture of this page today. I believe it's on page 135. And your character is having coffee with Mrs. Bon Giovanni. And I just wanted to share this one line with you, because sometimes when I write, and when I'm done writing, I look, is there a line there that I really like a lot? Maybe it has a meter to it, maybe it has alliteration or whatever, but I wanted to share this with you. Hold on. I should have memorized it. I could have. But anyway, it says here, the sweet bread is warm between my fingers. Do you recognize what I'm going to say? And I hold a napkin under my slice and bite into it. It's been so long since I ate something this wonderful. There are the nourishing tastes of grains and yeast, and also the luxury of butter and the sweetness of sugar. When did I ever eat anything for pure pleasure? When was the last time anyone encouraged me to? So I think about in that book. You get 2 cans of cream corn, and it's awesome. You get a half-eaten donut, and it's awesome. So when you take the simple scene with an older woman and you're eating her bread, and that just really made me feel good, that you didn't have to have an expensive car, jewelry. It was just butter, and I want to thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. My God. You know, I do think, again, as I get older, I really, I'll just end with, you know, I've never believed there's a God who knows my name and loves me. I still don't. But I believe in the divine. I believe there's something quite beautiful, mysterious, and invisible in and around us at all times around the world. We are joined to all of us. We are all joined in our suffering. We are all one. A murdered Palestinian child is as important as a murdered Israeli child, as important as a brown boy getting shot for being on the wrong corner in Philly. And we are all one in this. And I think that life can be so scary and beautiful. And it seems to me that, well, I can tell you that I walk around every day with prayers of gratitude. I say thank you to some God I don't believe in all day long. You know, I missed that flight to get here, and I thought, I am not going to make it, and Matt's going to have to just do it himself, which he could certainly do. And then Danielle sold me a flight to Chicago. And I thank Danielle, this lovely African-American lady about, you know, my age. And then, you know, I meet this nice young lady on the plane, my daughter's age, and she's an Irish dancer, and we talk about dance, and I talk about my wife's dance. And then I get to Logan, and I think, I'm actually going to make it to Exeter. And I pull into the drive-thru of a Starbucks, and I get a delicious cup of coffee. Back to coffee. And I'm sipping this coffee, thanking whomever for coffee and the ability to drink it. You guys, thank you so much. You're wonderful.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt.